Hey guys, welcome to another video. This one is going to be one of those tech rants or rant from a CTO or whatever that playlist I called on YouTube was. And this is regarding the recent 3CX hack that everyone has been talking about and has been going on. Um, I just want to cover a few things about it. There's a in the Mandiant investigation that came out, it turned out that based off what they found, there was a compromise from a employee's computer at 3CX. They had downloaded a file back in 2022, like February 2022 or something like that. They had downloaded a file that had malware sideloaded on it, and that caused the 3CX computer to get compromised. And then it sat there, it did some scanning and lateral movement, and eventually got to more of the network. It's unclear how much of the network was compromised or not, but the malware was running for a year unfound. And the only reason why it was found is because the 3CX software was compromised, which caused the 3CX clients, the customers of 3CX, their own security procedures to fire. And that's what caused it. That's what flagged the issue. And then the customers raised it up with 3CX, and then 3CX started the investigation. But basically, for a year, 3CX network was running essentially compromised, controlled by some threat actor, and they didn't know. So I want to cover this, and this is not meant to be like a rag on 3CX specifically. There's an important message here that I'm trying to, that I hopefully I succeed in bringing across. Many years ago, back in the day, we were originally at the company I was at, IntelliComp was originally partnered with 3CX, and we ran into problems with the way they dealt their customer relationships. They were very aggressive. They were very closed-minded. They were not there. It wasn't a partnership. In one of my blog articles on my personal blog, mendionline.com, I talk about how a partnership is a two-way street. As a service provider, regardless of how big or small you are, if you are guaranteeing service to your client, the level of service that you can provide is only as good as the level of service that you get, which means that you need to make sure that your partners are providing the level of service that you expect to provide to your clients. Because if you're not getting that level of service, then there's no way you can receive it. You can if you're not receiving that level of service, there's no way you can give that over to somebody else. Unless you have either backup plans or alternatives, which means you're not using that company. But essentially, if critical services of yours are being provided by an outside company, and you're reselling those to a client of yours, that there's a stream, there's a chain, and you have to have constant flow of equal amounts on all sides of the chain in order for it to be a real partnership. Otherwise, you're just walking into a store, and it doesn't matter which store you get to, you're buying something off the shelf, and it doesn't matter what it is, which brand it is, you're just going for whatever's available, and that's not a partnership. So there are things that we had in our dealings with 3CX that caused us to take a step back. Their support policy specifically, their first answer was always not our problem. Try it on a default setup. If you can confirm after you've wiped everything and have everything within its supported little box that it's working, then come back to us and maybe we'll take a look at it. And that's how they started every single situation. They were unwilling to work with us on the areas of support. They weren't willing to work with us on the different types of configurations required for specific situations. It was just either you fit in this box or you don't fit in this box. And if you're not in this box, it's not our problem. Leave me alone. And it didn't really that doesn't really align with our culture and what we try to offer to our clients. We were always looking for whatever the client needed to do, we would perform within a reasonable amount. Obviously, we weren't going to kill ourselves for it. And it's just like we can't take this level of box controlled support and then translate that into an open support policy, which was what we had for our clients, which caused us to move on. Now, if you look at that attitude and you look at the situation that occurred back in the beginning of March, when reports initially started coming out about the 3CX compromise that occurred, 3CX's first response was, not us, go talk to the AV vendor. And there's still a lot of people who say this is an accepted response from 3CX. A lot of people in the community, I've spent a lot of time going through the community forums on 3CX. A lot of people in the community are saying this is fine. It's how were they supposed to know, blah, blah, blah. Like, but if you think about it for a second, let's say that our goal, our why, our reason for being here is to serve the client. Now, in order to serve the client, we have to provide a product. And if there's a chance that this product is probably an issue, there's nothing wrong with saying, can you check with your AV vendor? But there absolutely is something wrong with saying, it's not our problem, only talk to your AV vendor. So there was no, like, you can see the responses on the forums when people started posting about it. You can see screenshots of support tickets. The response literally was, this is not our problem, go talk to your AV vendor. There was no trying to work with you. That attitude of open support policy was very closed, just like the same in the same mentality as what I had discovered in my efforts when we were trying to work with 3CX originally. And you can see how this attitude trickles down. Now, if you fast forward, the concerns that happen are people were posting like, what do we do? And like, obviously clients were panicking on the forums and so on and so forth. Like, one of the CEO gets up there and responded to on the forum. He said something like, don't worry, you're not the target, and so they won't be coming after you anyways, like worst case scenario. I think the question was like, how can we remove the client, or can you roll back? Can you put a older version? The question was, can you put an older version of the desktop application up on the website so that all of my clients will self-update to the old version and remove this vulnerability? And the response was, that's something along the lines of, no, don't worry, they're not coming after you anyways. This is very targeted. This is a very sophisticated attack for a specific target. They're not coming after you. And which is like, again, it's the same kind of, we won't work with you. It's a very closed-minded response. And it's not true. And now if we fast forward to today, what we know, they're calling it a double supply chain attack or something like along those lines, some fancy wording, like never been done before, supply chain through supply chain attack. It's garbage. It's not true. It's a random malware file that someone downloaded software from, just like any other person. It's not like these companies have a different breed of people that don't get hacked, and therefore they had to like double hack 3CX in order to. No, 3CX was not targeted here. There was a software that had been compromised that was sitting around for 2 years. The software had been discontinued in 2020 and the website was still up in 2022. And CISA had provided a advisory saying, if you have this software, don't make sure it's not there because it's vulnerable. There was a vulnerability advisory that had gone out about the software that was very public. And despite that, someone from 3CX, an employee, had downloaded that software and ran it on the computer. Despite doing that, despite not realizing about the advisory, nothing flagged that software as malware. Nothing triggered inside the environment. The malware was able to run within the network. It was able to move laterally to other devices, stealing the employee's credentials. No flags whatsoever for over a year. And the only reason why it was found at 3CX was because the clients of 3CX, who do take security seriously, had a problem and raised it. And there were enough clients making a big enough stink that 3CX had to step back and go, oh, okay, maybe it is us. Now, again, my point isn't to rag on 3CX. I'm just stating the timeline of what happened through facts and gathered, posted on various news sites and from the Mandiant investigation. The point is that vendor selection is a very, very, very important process that you have to do. It doesn't matter if you're a managed services provider. It doesn't matter if you're another vendor. It doesn't matter if you're another company, SMB, enterprise. It doesn't make a difference. You are using services from an outside company. there's no way that you can trust them at their face value. You have to do your due diligence. It has to, number one, and most importantly, is not the price and cost. That should be a factor because you need to be profitable, but that is not the most important factor. The most important factor is, will they work with you? Because if I'm selling their service and something happens to it, I need someone who will work with me to make sure that service can get restored. Otherwise, everything I'm building on that service use, whether or not it's a resold service to my clients or whether or not it's a critical piece of my infrastructure within my organization, goes blank, gone, unsupportable, and unusable in the event of an issue. And this is not like, world-ending scenarios. These are standard risk assessments that you should be performing. And it should have been, with that kind of attitude, it should have been the risk assessment that 3CX performed the first time someone responded and said, hey, you're being flagged as malware. The response should have been, well, if I consider the risks of that actually being true, like, how bad does it get if it really does have malware inside my application? Instead of the closed-minded, no, we can't do anything wrong, we're in our box and that's the only thing that we support. Instead of that closed-minded attitude, it could have been, well, if that's potentially possible, let's imagine how bad this would get. And we don't have to imagine it actually happened, right? But if the employee in 3CX policy had been, let's imagine how bad this could get, is it worth the risk of ignoring it, or should we investigate before we say, no, it's not us? And the answer, obviously, I think now at this point would be, they would agree that the answer would have been, let's investigate it sooner. They may not claim publicly that they delayed it, but in the end, like, there were reports going for over a month before they actually made any action on it. And yeah, I understand that there are reasons why, like, we had no way of knowing, how are we supposed to know, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is that if you had performed a risk assessment in terms of how bad this can scale versus spending 30 minutes to take this seriously, right? This whole event could have been avoided. It's still bad because 3CX themselves are compromised for a year, but at least the scale would have been significantly less. So risk assessments, need to account for how well this vendor will work with me. It has to account for those types of things. And you have to make sure that a vendor will align with your core values and will be able to deliver to you the level of service that you yourself want to deliver. Whether or not it's supporting a critical infrastructure within your organization, whether or not you're reselling that service to someone else, doesn't matter. The level of service that is being provided has to meet your requirements that you need so that you can provide the level of service you want to give. And there's no other way for it to work unless you start building out, and in certain situations, you can have multiple different platforms or providers giving you the same kind of service. But, in that case, you have to account for and expect certain things to go a certain way. Anyways, that's all I really wanted to rant about. Security awareness training is absolutely critically important. And it's not important for you to say, oh, I have security awareness training because I checked the box, I have Know before, or something like that. I have FIN. No, it's not good enough to say that you have a product doing security awareness training, so to speak. It has to be taken seriously. It is a executive from the top down to every single person in the organization. They need to be on top of being aware and being paranoid that someone's after you, because they are. They may not be after you personally, but they sure are after your money. They are after your personal information. And so if they can snag it, they will grab it. And it'll be a bad day for everyone. Security awareness training was clearly lacking here. The employee ran malware. I mean, other security controls were lacking as well, the EDRs and stuff like that. There was a lot of lessons that you could have learned from this situation. I mean, you have to think about that. That's 1 year the threat actor was active within the network. We're lucky the only thing that happened and that we know of right now is that the 3CX desktop application was compromised. There are a lot of things that could have gone beyond that. Anyways, that's it. That's my time. And hopefully it was useful to you. And if not, then it was useful to me that I was able to rant and get this off my chest. So thanks for watching if you watched. And if not, well, at least I got a diary out.